Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Once Upon a Time in PatORG, the companion podcast to PatORG Survivor Hollywood All Star Season. My name is Danny, and today I'm going to be going over the game of the one and only Steven. Hi, Steven. How are you?
Hello, hello. Good. Happy to be here despite making it so far and coming up short. But
Fifth
good. I'm
place
happy to be here.
again. How are you feeling
You
about fifth
know,
place?
ugh, I think I'm the president of the fifth place club at this point. Like there it's just oh I and the funny thing is this time it was kind of my fault, but in a different way than the last time I got fifth place. So it's just
We'll
it,
talk
it's
about
like
it.
that. Yeah, we'll get into
We'll
it.
get into it. But first, I do want to start by asking you about some of your preseason expectations. So before the game started, who did you expect to see on the cast? I know that you've spectated some of these seasons. Um, and who did you think you would be able to work with? Or maybe you might be in trouble if they were on the same cast as you?
Ooh, well, I definitely anticipated Shay, and I had an idea about EJ for sure, from my season. Uh, just because I think the three of us, we all played different games, but dynamic games, and were well liked. Um, and I'll say Justin, was a nice surprise because it's someone from the other tribe on my season that came, and so that was kind of fun. Um, I definitely expected people like Henry, Sarah, B, Clara. Um, I don't think there was anyone I was too surprised that either didn't show up or um, that made the cast. Um, I am surprised about just the season 24 people wanting to go back to back because that's rough. Um, so props to them because man, that would be rough going from one season straight into the next.
Yeah.
Um, but I did want to work with Shay, and I know that became like a whole thing throughout the season. But I felt like I needed to do right by her, considering what happened on our first season. And I really wanted to play with EJ again, 100%. I was looking forward to playing with Sarah. Never got a chance to. Uh, I actually really wanted to play with B and DeLuca as well because I know they're both really good social players, and so that was fun. Um, I was definitely wary when Chris got announced, 100%, just because having watched him the previous time, just seeing how he played the first time, I was curious if he would play the same way the second time. And from my perspective, he did. Um, but yeah, I don't, the cast I think overall was really great. I don't think anyone like I questioned why they were there at all.
Right. Super good cast, super fun, and I agree. The season 24 people, I think it was too soon for some of them, but hey, it worked out for at least one of them, right? I should
Yeah, yeah,
mention
it did.
that we're recording in the middle of Final Tribal Council, so there are some spoilers as to what happened after Steven's vote out, but we'll get there. But first, we did hear a little bit from Shay and we did hear a little bit from EJ about what exactly happened on your original season. But I'd love to hear from you, your perspective. If you could give us a quick recap of your original game on PatORG.
Oh man. I think Andrew said it in like a cast assessment somewhere that I played hard and loose. Um, and it was never really my intention to play that way, I guess. But um, I knew that I wanted to try to avoid tribal council as much as possible in the tribal phase, right? And so I did everything I could to make sure that our starting tribe never went. We only went once. Um, Shay, Will, and Jake and I were all kind of outcasted from the get go. So we formed our little College Kids and Steven alliance. But when the swap happened, I was the only one that got separated from that group. Um, Ended up on a swap tribe that was a mess, but that's where I linked up with EJ and Christina, and ended up finding the idol hunt and getting the idol with them, uh, which is kind of a mistake. It happened on a VC where we were just kind of talking through what the idol hunt could be, and I gasped when I found it, and they're like, "What? What is it?" And I probably should
Oh
have kept it to
wow.
myself, but oh well. So at that point, when we get to merge, I had this dilemma of, do I stick to my CCAS alliance or do I go with EJ and Christina? And the problem was EJ and Christina knew I had the idol. And so I knew, or I felt, that if I turned on them at any point, immediately I would get thrown under the bus and targeted. And so from that point, I decided, you know what? I have to cut ties with CCAS. And ultimately, Will and Jake got voted out back to back. And I will acknowledge that maybe I was emotionally manipulative with them. You know, the thing with me is when I'm talking with people, especially in game and we're just having a good time, I forget that we're in the game, and so things might get personal and things might happen where we're just talking and whatnot. And I don't see that as gameplay, but I can see why it would come across as gameplay for others. Um, So I was this little spy for Christina and EJ the whole time, telling them what Shay and Jake and Will were plotting, what they were saying, what they wanted to do. Um, and I gave my idol to Christina to have her play it on someone else. So that way no one thought that I had the idol, and put the target on Christina, which was great for me. Um, and then at Final Five, I wasn't supposed to go home. But Rory, the winner, said, "Hey, if you want to vote out EJ, I'm not voting with you and I'm not voting against you, but I think you could make it work." And it was a weird way for him to say that. And it was like an hour or two before the vote was due. So I tried to flip it on EJ and I wasn't the target, but because I tried to flip it, he in turn targeted me and got me voted out. So uh, a little bit of a bummer in
Wow.
that regard. But overall, that was a really fun game. I was in my feels a lot of it, especially when I had to betray CCAS because that was rough. But yeah, that's 21 from Steven's point of view.
Wow. Very interesting. Um, it sounds like there are some parallels to your All Stars game as well, with you avoiding a lot of the tribals in the tribal phase, and then again ending up in fifth place. Do you have any other sort of comparisons to your game from amusement parks to now in All Stars
I think
or social
I only
media?
won.
Sorry.
Oh yeah. I only won one immunity too, I think, in the first one.
Hmm.
Um, and everyone touts me as like some crazy challenge threat, but I was always the bridesmaid, never the bride. I got second so close, or like a couple challenges, I completely dropped the ball altogether. Um, and if I think about it, I think the challenge that was Final Five in social media was Simultation,
Hmm.
where we had like three channels and we had to check into each of them over as fast as possible, like do 15 in one, do 45 in another, and whatnot. Um, and I could have handled that one a lot better. I think if I remember correctly, my computer froze right when I started that challenge, and so I was stressing. But here it was just I couldn't read. I just didn't, and I did this all the time in 21 where I just wouldn't read the instructions clearly, and I don't know. I won't blame Pat, but I don't know if it's like the way that it's formatted. I just ignore the big bold letters at the top. I do the command, but I just didn't see that it said 3 by 3, and so I did the 5 by 5, whatever puzzle that was. And if I had done it correctly, I think I would have beat Peter. and at least gotten fourth place. Um, I don't think I would have beat Henry. I needed more preparation for that final challenge. I think I don't know if I would have beat Henry or not, but other parallels, I don't know. This my game this time around was very. It felt very different. It was not the game I wanted to play. It felt like the game that I was forced to play, and it was a little frustrating at times. Um, I don't know. I don't know. Lots to think about in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, great points. I also want to talk about the twist of the season. Pat always has these amazing twists. Um, and this season it was the Hollywood sign, which was sort of like an exile. And you did attend the Hollywood sign at least once. What were your
I
thoughts
didn't.
on?
I
Oh, you
never
didn't.
went.
You never went to the Hollywood sign.
I never went, and I wanted to go. I wanted to go real bad.
What were your
Um,
thoughts on the twist as a whole?
from what I heard from everybody else, they all hated it. And I think it's because that maybe the challenges were too hard to be able to like implement whatever the twist was for the round. Because I never got an explanation for what the comedy aspect. I never went to tribal, and so it
Right,
felt like a lot of those um, twists had to do with what happened at tribal. It's like the comedy aspect or the horror aspect, but I hardly ever went to try tribal, so I never saw the implications of it. I heard about the extra vote that was handed out a couple times, um, but yeah, I have really no thoughts about it because it did not impact my gameplay at all, and it's kind of interesting that almost no one. I think a couple people mentioned it in their final tribal speeches, but it didn't seem to play that big of a role, I think, as what was originally imagined, or at least what I thought it would.
right. I could see that. And how does it compare to your twist on your original season in social media?
Um, the twist in social media was this spy twist where we would get to vote anonymously who we wanted to send to the other tribe if we won the challenge, and then they would be able to sit in on their tribal council, and if they wanted to, they could vote, but they would lose their vote at the next tribal council. And so this one being a public vote on like a public unanimous vote to go to the Hollywood sign made it very, very hard to try to strategize who you sent because every single time it was random. And no one wanted to. I know people wanted to go. I wanted to go, but no one wants to be that guy that says, "Hey, I want to go," because if your tribe goes to tribal council, you're safe. And so it's like, well, that's not fair because blah 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 and this that and the other. And so I prefer the spy twist. I think there's a little bit more that can be done in that regard. I mean, we were able to convince the one time we had a spy before swap come to us, we were able to convince them to completely waste their vote, and it was great, great move. Um, but yeah, I think I prefer the spy twist over the Hollywood sign for sure.
Yeah. So it did not have too much of an impact on your pre-jury game, uh, and you didn't go to a lot of tribal councils in pre-jury. But do you want to talk about any particular points, or walk us through your pre-jury game? Any details that you're happy to share?
Sure. Pre-jury was super. Um, I mean, it was kind of split into three chunks, right? We had pre-swap, first swap, second swap, and pre-swap. I felt pretty good with everybody. Justin was like the only person that was very hands off with me, and I never realized till he got voted out that he was scared of like EJ, Shay, and myself because he had voted us out. But I never held that against him. I kind of wanted to come into the game with no um predisposition against anybody on how they played previously or what they've done. Um, and I felt like I was in a good spot on that first um, that first section. Although I learned later on that because I didn't tell Chris that I knew that he knew that I knew about the idol hunt, he distrusted me immediately and like just did not. I don't know. It was a weird when I found that out. It made sense, but I'm like the kind of guy. I'm like, I know that you know that I know, so why do I have to tell you? Because Andrew told you that I know. Like it's just I don't know. That was weird. Anyways, um, and then the first swap happens, and I'm literally getting on an airplane to go to vacation. Um, and I was very, very, very lucky that we never went to tribal council in that first swap. Um, because from everything that I heard, I was a potential target because of my quote unquote inactivity. Although I found it strange because people would talk to me and I would update them on we would talk, we just have conversations. But because we were never going to tribal council, there was no game talk that needed to happen. And I don't know if it was because people were nervous of each other and like tiptoeing around. Um, but like I had good conversations with DeLuca and Peter, and Chris would constantly tell me, yeah, I'm not hearing anything on my end. But then I find out later that he is running around like crazy, telling everyone everything and basically trying to get me voted out because I'm quote unquote inactive, even though I said this, I'm sure I sound like a broken record, but I did a freaking challenge in TSA. Like
Oh, wow.
I'm so crazy, I swear. If that's not dedication to the tribe, I don't know what is. Um, but yeah, so like I was very, very fortunate that whole pre-swap, that first swap, to never go to tribal council. The entire second swap, it wasn't until I was on the plane coming home that we went to tribal council, and I had to do I had to do the challenge on the plane. Um, and so I feel very, very, and if I had made it to final tribal council, I would have brought up how incredibly lucky I was that we never went to tribal council while I was on vacation, because going on vacation and playing an org is not recommended at all. Um, but I did it. So, you know, props to me, I guess.
Yeah, you did it and you made it far. So props to you.
Yeah, something worked along the way. But
There,
yeah, like that pre-swap or that pre-merge was all, I think, just laying the foundations on some of the more important relationships that I would forge later on into the merge. My biggest mistake, here it is, and
mhm.
I know people will hound me for it
I think
when I
I
get
think
out.
I was about to ask you, I think maybe what you're about to bring up, but go ahead.
I don't know what possessed me. I was in a silly, goofy mood because when Shay and I just get at each other, it's like when two siblings fight, but it's like a playful, banter or
Yeah.
whatever. We just kind of go. And I have lots of dirt on Shay and she's got lots of dirt on me. And so we just started sharing random pictures of each other that we have that are embarrassing or funny or whatever. And it did not, this is when I forget that I'm in a freaking Survivor game, but it did not occur to me in the slightest that people would look at that and be like, they have each other's Snapchats. What are they doing? Are they talking to each other when they're on Snapchat about the game? Which we never did. I think both of us subconsciously knew that Snapchat was meant for just being silly and showing her pictures of the vacation. And we kept everything in the org, like if we were going to talk to each other about the game, right? Like
Yeah.
being online and whatnot. But and then the rumor that Shay and I had met up, which is funny because we wanted to, and it never happened. Um, but oh, gosh, that was my biggest. I think that is my biggest mistake, and my second one was the Chris thing, because both of those shaped heavily what happened to me come the merge. Um,
Yeah.
gosh, it's So bad.
I mean, it's easy to let your guard down when you're just having a good time and not going to tribals, so I understand. But did you think that that would have such an impact on your game?
I think after I think after the fact. I think it was maybe like a day later or something. I thought to myself and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if that was good. I don't know if I should have done that." And then I think it was either at merge or at the next swap. I don't remember. I don't remember the timeline exactly, but someone had kind of mentioned it to me. And Shay and I were trying so hard to keep our relationship um,
Low key.
not secret or yeah, very low key. Like I kept throwing her under the bus. She did the same to me. Um, like I would say, "Oh, I did her really dirty. I don't think she wants to team up with me. I feel like she wants revenge." And she would kind of say, I assume she would say it along the same lines to other people. But then we did that, and it was just we undid all that work. Oh dear, oh dear. But yeah, if I could change one thing about my game, it would definitely be that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. But you do make the merge with all that information out there. How do you plan to navigate this merge? Or what would your ideal path have been throughout the merge, including who you most wanted or not wanted to go to the end with? And how did that change throughout your merge game?
Oh dear. It's tough when you don't go to tribal council very often because you're not seeing people's games, right? Um, and so deciding early on who I wanted as potential final tribal people, I don't know. I don't know if I would have gone the route of wanting to take Shay and EJ seriously to the end because we all vibed really well. Or if I would have tried to find someone a little bit more, um, I don't know, maybe easier to win against. That sounds bad, but the merge, what sucked about the merge was all this information that was just getting to Chris. And it felt like, I mean, I was I was getting my comeuppance for 21 because I spilled all the information constantly, and now I'm on the other side of it where all of my information is getting spilled everywhere. So, um, but it results in my two probably biggest allies going home right away. Um, and it's a shame that we didn't try to split the vote so that Chris, even if he played the idol, someone else would have gone. That's hindsight. That would have been so much better. And then I think Shay could have stayed a little bit longer, and we could have done some work. But I really wanted to play. Everyone says they want an under the radar game, but I really just wanted to go with the flow and kind of hide myself, at least at the start of Merge. And when you get put in the spotlight immediately, your back's up against the wall and there's nothing, it's like there's nothing you can really do. And it was really, really frustrating. Constantly having to prove myself as a non threat, even though everyone's telling me that I am a threat. Up until when I got voted out, everyone said I was a threat, and I never saw it. I never understood why I was such a threat, especially when my first two allies got voted out back to back. Like that just never made sense to me. You voted out my allies. Yeah, they're on the jury and they might vote for me in the end, but in the game, I have no power now. I am heavily reliant on Andrew, on Henry, um, semi reliant on like Talia and Gabe, right? So like I wanted to play a more dominant game where I could control the votes and be comfortable, not where I had to sit back and just go along with what everyone else said. Because I knew that the moment that I said something, if I wanted to target someone after Chris left, I knew that the moment that I would like, let's try to get out Henry, let's try to get out Andrew, immediately red flags go up for everyone else. Steven's playing hard again. We got to get him out. So yeah, that's some quick fire thoughts, I guess, on the merge.
What were your thoughts about the sort of at the merge? There was this battle of the duos, and there was so many duos in the game, some that were called out in some final word speeches. Um, two of the duos actually were from the same season, season 24, and then your duo with Shay ultimately was the first one sort of split up. What were your thoughts on that dynamic at the merge tribe?
I thought it was wild to me that so many people were calling out Shay and I because of the Snapchat fiasco, but they were blatantly looking past Chris and DeLuca teaming up again and Gabe and Talia teaming up again in a way because I think they worked together last season, but not as in depth as this season. But it was just weird to me that so many people were worried about this group of three, if you include EJ in there, when there was a massive group of four sitting right there with two idols. Um, and like the duo talk is so dumb to me because ultimately everyone's a duo with someone, right? Everyone's got their partner, everyone's got their number one that they're going to go to with information and talk game and get things figured out. And so this idea that, ooh, got to watch out because Steven and Shay are a duo was so dumb to me because it's like, okay, and if we are, what about it? You're in a duo with this person who doesn't know that you're also in a duo with this person. And like it was so weird. It felt like there was no clear cut majority. I feel like it was more groups of two and three coming together for votes. And that happened almost all throughout the entire merge. Because then I ended up teaming up with Andrew and Henry, and we stuck together for almost all the votes unless they left me out, or vice versa. But you had Peter and Stanley, Gabe and Talia, um, DeLuca and Chris, Nelson and Talia. Like they're all these different little duos, and people are so scared of a duo, but you outnumber duos. Like if you have three people, you already outnumber the duo. So I'm frustrated.
Yeah, it was
Say the least.
definitely difficult to navigate, and it was so strange how out in the open all of these connections were to everyone. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, we get to the final five. We see you, Peter, Talia, Henry, and Stanley, with Peter winning immunity. What are your feelings about what happened this round? And is there anything that you wish you did differently?
I wish I could read. I wish I could freaking read.
You're not the
Cause
only
that,
one. I think it's everyone in PatORG. Just we cannot read the rules.
yeah, cause that's what did me. I lost to Peter by 2 points, and I feel
Yeah.
I haven't looked. This is my problem too. Is I've done this in other orgs where I will just submit the challenge and not look at it again. I just don't want to deal with, excuse me, the knowledge of if I messed up or not. I should have reviewed each submission before I started the next one. Um, the, gosh, and that round was very frustrating because it was weird because Pat decided to announce the challenge and then the results at 7 in the morning my time. So I'm waking up to what's happening rather than kind of talking with everyone and trying to figure out a game plan if I lose, you know? Um, and everybody was online for maybe at least an hour um, before everybody went offline. And I remember I wasn't feeling up to working, so I just kind of sat on my couch and I was constantly on my phone looking, and everyone's offline. No one's coming online to talk. No one's talking, saying anything to me. And it's frustrating because every single vote this season, for whatever reason, has taken almost a full 24 hours. And it's frustrating. Um, and I mean, I get it because you get time to rethink your plans and um, maybe get a better sense of what's going on. But when no one is talking to me, no one is online, no one wants to entertain any sort of plan that I'm trying to throw out there, because I talked to Peter about voting out Henry. I talked to Tali about voting out Henry. I talked to Stanley about voting out someone. Like, I tried all these different angles. And when everyone goes offline and I can't say anything, I can't do anything, my hands are tied behind my back. I did not want to sit a full 24 hours waiting if I knew that I was just going to go home. So then that's why I called everyone out in tribal council, because it's like, that's the only thing I can do. That's the only power I have left in the game, is deciding when I get to go home. Um, and so I was frustrated because it's like, you're not going to, you're not at least going to tell me that it's me and then just get it over with right away. Just rip the band-aid off. I don't want to sit and wallow all day wondering. I'd
Mhm.
rather just get it over with. So, anyways,
do you
that was
think
my.
do you think that if Peter had not won immunity there and someone else had won it but not you, do you think that you'd have a better chance?
I think so. Um I think people were worried about Peter comping out for sure over me. Especially since my last couple challenge performances I don't think were that amazing. I don't know if people saw that. I noticed it. Um but I think Henry would have wanted to keep me, and I think Talia would have wanted to keep me over Peter if that were the case. Um yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I would have made it at least a final four, but
Well, Final Five is not bad. It's better than a lot of other players, and I mean you made it there, so congratulations.
thank
Um,
you. I appreciate it.
we talked a little bit about some of the moments that you regret. Are there any moments that you're super proud of in your All Star game?
I think having this is the biggest target. Well, this is one of the biggest targets I've had. I had a massive target when I played GeoOrgs because I was in the middle of a pagonging, and there I managed to keep winning immunities, which is great. I think I won four or five. Um, and so I'm proud that I was able to make it to Final Five despite having this massive perceived target on my back. Um, and looking at the jury and their response when I made it to Ponderosa, I think I got in my feels a little bit. I think in my confessional about thinking that I didn't really not deserve to be there, but that my game was just not. It wasn't the game that I wanted to play, and I was a little disappointed in myself with how things went. That I was kind of forced into a corner. Rather, if I had put myself into a corner intentionally, I think that's one thing, but uh, it's different when you're told that you're a target, even though the only thing you have going for you is maybe a good social game. But you're not making any moves, right? I didn't direct any votes. I didn't lead the charge. Um, so I think even though I didn't have the biggest impact on the game in that regard, making it to Final Five while having this big target on my back, uh, I'll say I'm proud of that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You should be. I mean, you you put the fear of God into them.
Somehow.
So, um, you are on the jury, and ultimately, you will contribute to deciding the winner of this game. Could you give us a ranking of the final three? That is Talia, Henry, and Stanley. Going into FTC, of who you are most likely to vote for. I know we're in FTC right now, but let's
Yep.
pretend we're not there yet. How do you rank those three in who you want to win?
So I'll say from my perspective before I hit the jury,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think I was very inclined to vote Henry, then Talia, then Stanley. Um, just because I know Henry's game, like of the three, Henry and I played the closest together, so I understood his game. There were still some parts maybe that I didn't know um, or understand, um, but the gap between him and Talia was very close. Between Talia and Stanley, it's a little bit bigger, just because Stanley felt like such a non-issue a lot of the times. Um, and that's not like to rag on him as a person or anything. It felt like he wasn't the one controlling the votes. It felt like it was more either a collaboration with Peter, or it was directly Peter and him telling being told what to do. So yeah, I think it would have been Henry, Talia, then Stanley in that regard.
And we're at FTC now, but what is something that you look for in a finalist when they're making their case at FTC that really gets your vote?
I need I say this like I'm ordering something at a restaurant. I need someone that I think is both they're confident in their game and they're confident in their mistakes. You need to have someone that realizes when they've dropped the ball and own up to it, and not either skirt the issues or um, point fingers. I've never been a fan, like even on the show, of when the finalists kind of attack each other, because I get it, like it's high stakes, they want to win. Um, but at the same time, like I don't know how, like my perception of the game is very different than Henry's perception of the game versus Talia's perspective of the game. And so I just want to see what the game was like through their eyes. And I don't want the color commentary coming from someone else about, well, this is what your game was like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've always said this in regards to like Russell Hantz, why he never wins Survivor. But ultimately, if you want people to respect your game, they need to respect you. Um, and looking at how you handle someone being voted out is very important, I think. Um, and I say that as someone that, I was shut out for hours um, when I got voted out, right? Like I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you send people to the jury and they're going to be mad at you for sending them to the jury, you need to be ready for that. And I guess how you navigate that, right? So there's a lot of random thoughts there, but that's kind of my overall feeling of what I look for in a finalist.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me. Is there any last thoughts that you have on this game? Um, any overall arching thoughts on your All Stars game as a whole?
Um, it's not the game I wanted to play, but it's the game that I ultimately am proud of in the end. I think I would have won it in the end had I made it. Hard to tell, but I'm glad I was considered as an all-star. I don't know if I played like an all-star this time, but um, you know, someday I will get the W. Just got to keep playing, I guess.
Yeah, that's the spirit. For now, just sit back and let Patrick enjoy our misery.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, Stephen, thanks so much for your time. Um, it's been so fun talking to you. Always is. And I'll hear from you later, I guess.
Heck yeah.
Bye, Stephen.
Bye.